Well, I think that we all are tired after 2 days of conference. Maybe I shall start with the fairy tale we have in the Czech language. We have famous children fairy tale, which is about how the cat and the dog baked a cake. It was written by Karel Čapek, maybe you heard his name, of Czech author. By the way, he invented the word robot to the international vocabulary. And those two animals, cat and dog, decided to bake a cake, and they expected that if each of them will put there the best it likes, that it will be nice for both. So the dog put the bones, the cat put the mouses, and I have here a picture. You see the cat putting the chocolate and the dog putting the onion. And when they baked it and started to eat it, they found it's horrible. And I think it is the idea of XDefinitions. We tried to put together almost all what you need if you would like to be happy with XML. It's a technology which started, I think, almost 10 years ago, when my boss sitting here brought to my office the pile of sheets, because we were working for the car insurance company, and you cannot imagine what you can insure. It can be not only the car, it could be motorcycle, but also tractor and bugger and tramway and train and everything. And for each kind of accident and each kind of insurance, it's completely different sheet with completely different parameters. And my boss was very brave, and he decided to build the system on XML, which we are happy, all of us here. And then I was very much afraid how it will work. And it was not much of technologies then available. So he told me, do with that something. It was DTD. In 2001, you couldn't use too much more. So very soon I found out that DTD is not enough. That, well, you can somehow validate the data, but the most important thing is not maybe only to validate, but also to be able to report error, to find out all errors. Some errors are connected with the outside world, with database, with relations inside of the object. So I started with something very simple. I got some form, some sheet expressed in the XML form, and here was some, let's say, insurance, and there was some parameters like car number. So I did something which is more natural. I simply wrote here's string, yeah? Okay, here is number, so it's integer, and so on. It's much more readable than anything else. I just replaced the data with the description of data, and of course, very soon I came to the idea that it's possible to write here the occurrence. Let's say this is optional and this is required and so on. And similar thing we did with elements. Anyway, it's still just the language for validation. And it's quite natural to say, well, what about to write here on error, do something, and to call maybe some external method, or to have some language, some script which is describing what to do. So this is the history of XDefinitions. What the XDefinitions, what kind of cake it is. It is a cake which is hopefully for analysts, for system designers, for description, and I think very readable one, description of data interfaces. And because I am a programmer, I wrote it, in fact, for myself. So it's also for programmers. And by the way, it's a very special way of programming, because you can put the code inside of the object on the place where the data are present. And finally, it is very readable for everybody. And it's very important if you are designing some kind of larger system, especially a distributed system, that you need to communicate with many different kind of partners. And some of them, they are not too much familiar with, let's say, XML schemes or schematron or RelaxNG and so on. So how to say it for them the most readable and natural way what's in the object. The XDefinitions can be used for many different things. First, of course, and some people do think it's the most important, and I think it's absolutely not enough, but it is important, of course. It is validation. I think with the idea I described, it's clear that for validation it's possible to use. But I'm sorry, I must use several glasses. What I tried to describe in the very beginning, it's the tool where you can define some kind of events. Let's say that this happens if it's parsed and it's found that there is an error. It's an event. But there can be other event. The other event is when the whole parsing is finished. So we can define some, let's say, events or stages on the XML, and we can describe what to do in these situations. And I think this is a very powerful part of XDefinitions. We are using it for maybe 8 years, and I think very successfully. It's possible also to use for data processing. I put in the behind the remark that data processing of unlimited size. We have some tricks which helps us to use the really unlimited size of data. We are processing as the XML data, the XML data of size of tens or hundreds of gigabytes. Just as a joke, it was one bug there that we used just the integer for some RBR, for some relative pointer, and we just changed it to long int, because today 2 gigabytes, it's nothing. It's possible to use also for something what we can say the generation of XML. Try to say that you want to generate from nothing, from some other data, from database, or you want to generate an XML object, and you want to be sure that you created the valid and correct object. So the XDefinitions are able to generate the data and to transform one XML object to another one XML object. As I described in the beginning, it's also possible to use for some kind of programming, which is very special because you put the code inside of the object So you don't care about the structure of the object. If this object is repeatedly somewhere, you don't need to write any kind of cycle. You just put there the code, what happens if it's reached. And finally, XDefinitions basically are connected with the outside world because it's just the envelope, and you can call any kind of external functions either in Java, or you can call the XPath procedures and so on. So now, very briefly, let's have some very simple data. It's some book with title, author, or let's say authors. You will see how we'll write it. So how we create XDefinition, we first remove all the data, and we have just the structure, and then we put the, as I already described, some description of values we have there. We can add, or we have to add the description of occurrences. And you see now that we are using also the namespace of XDefinitions just to be able to describe also something what we are, in the case of attributes and text nodes, putting in on the place where that could occur. So we need something to put in the, to describe in the element. So we are using for that the special attribute from namespaces of XDefinitions, and we call this attribute script. So this is, I think, an example of completely simple, readable, and precise definition of the structure. Of course, it's not enough. Here, I skipped this because it's just an example that it can be described explicitly and so on. Now I'm coming to the example of actions and events. I already mentioned that you can describe some events. So let's say that we will define the special event when we have no data and we have only this recipe, this description. So we are reading in this mode, in the create mode, we are reading the XDefinitions, and we are doing what's written in the paragraph or in the section which is called create. But we can put together, as the cat and dog, moment, that's what I made. I don't see with this glasses. Yeah. It is an example of using the XPath and having some. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I saw it already. Great, thank you. We have here an example of creating of one XML from another, let's say some kind of transformation. I think you should like it. And we write here, this is XPath, yeah? Let's have the structure or the data, which are books, the item which is called book is unlimited. There are many books there. And how they are created? They are created from from this source, from this item, which is a little bit different structure than the structure of the book in our description. This create from, simply imagine that we have the inline function, which is called from, which does nothing else than executes the XPath on the source. And it puts to the processor something what we call context. In this moment, it puts as a result, node list of all items here. It's